My mother looked at me across the white tablecloth at Morton's and said, "Your brother will handle your father's business." I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't joking. My name is Elena. I'm 34, and I've spent 12 years in financial consulting. But more importantly, I spent 12 years helping build my father's commercial HVAC company. Summers in the warehouse, weekends digitizing systems, free quarterly reports on industry trends. I did it because I loved it, because I thought it mattered, because I was naive enough to believe effort equals recognition. That Tuesday in October, I learned I was wrong. Mom's text came at 5:30. "Family dinner tonight. Morton's at 7. Your father wants everyone there. No excuses." Morton's was the kind of place where prices were a personality test. We'd been there 3 times in my life. My college graduation, Connor's engagement, Dad's 60th. So I knew this wasn't about pasta. I should have known something was off. I pulled into the parking lot at 6:58, my hands fidgeting with my keys. Connor's BMW was already there, vanity plate reading Apex 1. He's 31, works in commercial real estate, wears expensive watches and talks about markets like weather. His wife Victoria has a lifestyle blog about wine pairings. They photograph their breakfast. Inside, my family sat arranged like a portrait. Dad at the head wearing his navy suit and vintage Rolex, the watch his father gave him when he opened the business 42 years ago. That watch's second hand swept instead of ticked. Continuous motion. I loved that as a kid. The empty chair faced everyone. Of course it did. We made small talk. Mom asked about my apartment the way you ask about someone's health when you're just being polite. Victoria showed Napa photos. Connor checked his phone twice in 5 minutes. Dad kept clearing his throat. The waiter took orders. I got the salmon, second cheapest item, a habit I couldn't break even making 6 figures. Connor ordered the ribeye with truffle fries. Then Dad cleared his throat one final time. He was stepping back from the business, transitioning to advisory, and he'd made his succession decision. My spine straightened. I'd worked summers at that company through high school and college. I'd helped digitize their entire inventory system during grad school. For 3 years, I'd sent free quarterly reports suggesting expansions into green technology, pointing out competitors eating our market share. Mom squeezed Connor's shoulder, her smile bright and sharp like sunlight on glass. "Your brother will handle the business. We wanted to tell you together, as a family." I waited for the punchline. Dad had dry humor. He'd let jokes sit until uncomfortable, but he was nodding, proud. Connor grinned like he'd won something. "Connor? The business?" Dad's explanation sounded rehearsed. Connor had expressed serious interest. He had business experience. He was ready to settle down, build something lasting. I wanted to laugh. The last time I'd asked Connor about Dad's business, he'd called it unsexy work, his exact words. But here's the thing about being the eldest daughter in a family that wanted a son first. You develop this reflex. Swallow anger, smile, nod. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. So I said congratulations, raised my water glass, watched Victoria kiss Connor's cheek, leaving a lipstick print the color of a stop sign. Dinner moved like I was watching through glass. Dad discussed transition timelines. Mom mentioned how wonderful grandchildren would be running around the office someday. Connor asked questions proving he didn't know the difference between our B2B contracts and residential services. I cut my salmon into smaller and smaller pieces, barely eating, just moving food around. Mom turned to me with that smile that looked kind until you really looked. "Elena, you understand, don't you? Connor has a family to think about. Stability matters." I had an apartment, a career, a retirement account. Apparently, those didn't qualify as stability. Then Dad said the thing that cut through the fog. "Of course, we'll need Elena's help with the transition. Your financial expertise will be invaluable. Maybe you could consult part-time, help Connor get up to speed." They wanted me to train my replacement, to work for free again, but this time for my brother who'd never changed a compressor or drafted a bid proposal in his life. Mom jumped in. It'll be a family effort, everyone contributing what they do best. Victoria added she'd love to help with social media marketing. The company needed a rebrand, something modern, maybe a new logo. They'd already started planning, dividing the kingdom. I was the unpaid advisor to King Connor. The check came in a black leather folder. Dad reached for it, but Connor put his hand out. This one's on me, celebrating new beginnings. Something loosened in my chest. A small gesture, but something. The waiter returned. Connor barely glanced at the receipt before signing. Then he looked around the table. So how do we want to split this? I blinked. What? Connor slid the receipt to the center. $372 before tip. We're all adults here. Seems fair to divide it evenly. About $75 each plus tip. Mom nodded like this made perfect sense. You said this one was on you. Connor laughed that easy laugh of someone who's never thought twice about anything. I meant I'd put it on my card. For the points. Come on, Elena, you know how this works. Connor and Victoria had just returned from Napa. They drove a car worth more than my annual rent. Victoria's handbag sitting next to her wine glass cost at least $2,000. She'd called it a push present to herself. And they wanted me to split the bill for a dinner I didn't want, celebrating news that felt like a door slamming in my face. Part of me wanted to leave right then, but the part trained since childhood to keep peace kept me frozen. Don't make a scene. Family is family. Except I'd learned recently the full saying is actually, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds you choose mean more than the ones you're born into. I pulled out my wallet slowly. My salmon had been $34. I'd had water, no alcohol. I hadn't touched the breadbasket. I definitely hadn't ordered the $70 wine Victoria insisted would pair beautifully with her sea bass. Dad was reaching for his wallet, unbothered. Mom counted out cash. This was normal to them. Fair. I thought about all the free hours, the quarterly reports, the system overhaul, the weekends researching sustainability grants that could have saved thousands. I thought about 12-year-old me learning equipment manuals in the warehouse while Connor played basketball. I thought about that watch and how I'd never once heard Dad say he was proud of me. I pulled two 20s from my wallet and placed them on the table deliberately. That's for my meal, plus tip. Connor's smile faltered. Elena, come on, we agreed to split it. I don't remember agreeing to anything. You said it was on you. I'm paying for what I ordered. Mom's voice went sharp. Don't be petty. We're family. Exactly. We're family. So when you decided to give Dad's business to Connor, was I in that meeting? When you all agreed I'd consult for free to train my brother, did anyone ask if I was available? The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. Dad's expression shifted to disappointed authority. Elena, this isn't the time or place. When is the time? When you need my expertise for free? Connor leaned back. If you wanted the business, you should have said something. I've been saying something for 12 years. You just started listening when you needed someone to hand it to. Victoria touched Connor's arm, protective. This is incredibly rude. Your parents made a decision. You're not entitled to anything. The irony was suffocating. I wasn't entitled to a business I'd worked in since 16. But Connor was entitled to it after expressing interest sometime recently. I stood up. My chair scraped loud against the floor. I picked up my $40, considered leaving it, taking the high road. All those phrases that really mean let people treat you badly with a smile. Instead, I pulled out $120 and left it on the table. That's for my salmon and the collective delusion that this family knows anything about fairness. I walked out before anyone could respond. The cold air hit my face like a wake-up call. My hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding, but underneath the fear was something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. My phone started buzzing before I got home. Connor first. You seriously walked out? Over a dinner bill? Grow up. Then Mom. I'm very disappointed in you. Call me when you're ready to apologize. Victoria texted Connor, but he screenshotted it to me. Your sister is absolutely classless. Dad didn't text. Somehow that felt worse and better. I sat in my car outside my apartment watching messages flood in. Each one demanded response, explanation, apology. Each one assumed I was the problem. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Aunt Marie, Dad's younger sister. I hadn't seen her in years, not since some family falling out I'd been too young to understand. I heard you caused a scene at Morton's. I guess I did. She laughed, really laughed. Good. That family's needed someone to tell them the truth for 40 years. Your grandfather did the same thing to your dad, you know. Tried to pass him over for his older brother. That's why your dad's so obsessed with legacy. He's been proving himself to a dead man for decades. I'd never heard this story. Why didn't it work? With Dad getting passed over? Because his brother said no. Told your grandfather to split it fairly or he'd walk away. Your dad ended up with the business, but he never forgave his brother for making him feel like a charity case. Everything rearranged itself into a different picture. Dad wasn't giving Connor the business because Connor deserved it. He was rewriting his own history, making himself the generous father instead of the rejected son. And if you're enjoying these real-life stories and want to hear how this turned out, hit that subscribe button. I share one every week. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. Last week, someone from Oslo commented, and it made my entire day. Marie and I talked for an hour. She told me about her own business, a consulting firm she'd built after leaving the family company. She offered connections, advice, and something more valuable, validation that I wasn't crazy. After we hung up, I made tea and sat by my window. My apartment was small, one bedroom in a building that creaked, but it was mine. I'd chosen the paint colors. Nobody here needed me to be smaller or quieter or more grateful. Messages kept coming through the night. Connor. Mom's crying. Hope you're happy. Mom. Your father won't say it, but you've broken his heart. I turned my phone face down and opened my laptop. There was an email I'd been ignoring for 2 weeks, a former colleague asking if I'd be interested in partnering on a consulting venture. Eco-friendly building solutions for commercial properties. Exactly the work I'd been suggesting to Dad for years. I wrote back, let's talk. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 43 texts. I also had a coffee meeting scheduled and the outline of a business plan forming. The guilt I'd been bracing for never came. Instead, I felt clear-headed, focused. 3 days later, Dad called. Your mother wants you to come to Sunday dinner, to talk about this like adults. I was sitting in a cafe working on market research. What's there to talk about? Elena, you embarrassed us. You walked out over nothing. Over nothing. My career dismissed. My contributions erased. My feelings reduced to nothing. Here's what I learned in my work, Dad. When a system isn't functioning, you have 2 choices. Keep patching it, pouring resources into something fundamentally broken, or step back and ask if the system itself needs to change. This isn't business. This is family. Family is the most important business we ever run, and you've been running it with bad math. Silence. Then his voice got an edge I'd never heard directed at me. If you don't come Sunday, your mother will take it as a statement. Letter. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from power, from the radical act of meaning what I said. Sunday came and went. I didn't go. Instead, I met with my potential business partner and her team. We talked about markets and missions and building something that actually matters. Nobody mentioned legacy. Nobody asked me to work for free. Monday morning, Connor emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Formal and cold. He'd been reviewing company books as part of his transition. He had questions about the inventory system I'd built. Could I send documentation? Passwords? Maybe hop on a call to explain how it worked. The old Elena would have dropped everything to help. Instead, I wrote back, "My consulting rate is $200 an hour with a 4-hour minimum. Let me know if you'd like to schedule something." His response came in 3 minutes. "Are you serious right now?" My reply took 30 seconds. "Completely. You're running a business now. This is how businesses work." He didn't write back, but Aunt Marie did. She'd somehow heard about the exchange. Her message was short, "Proud of you." 2 weeks after Morton's, something unexpected happened. Victoria's best friend reached out on LinkedIn. She'd heard about what happened through the grapevine. She wanted to interview me for a podcast about women in family businesses and the invisible labor we're expected to perform. I almost said no. Too raw, too personal. But then I thought about all the other daughters sitting at tables, being told to smile and accept whatever's offered. I thought about the watch that would never be mine and the business built partially on my unpaid labor. I said yes. The podcast went up 3 weeks later. Small, niche, only a few thousand listeners. But one of those listeners was a journalist writing a piece about succession planning in family companies. The article ran with a different family as the main focus, but my story was there, anonymized but recognizable. The comments section exploded with similar stories. Daughters trained to help, then dismissed. Sons handed empires they'd never built. Connor called me furious. "Did you talk to a journalist about our private family business?" I talked about my experience, which is mine to share. "You're trying to sabotage me before I even start." Connor, if you can be sabotaged by someone else telling the truth, the problem isn't the truth. He hung up. Mom called an hour later, then Dad, both saying variations of the same thing. I was being selfish, vindictive, hurting the family for attention. I let them say what they needed to say. Then I told them what I needed to say. I'd spent 34 years translating their silences and managing their expectations and making myself smaller so they could feel bigger. I was done. Not with family, not with connection, but with the specific dynamic that required my diminishment for their comfort. If they wanted a relationship with me, it would be one where I was seen and valued, not as free labor or a supporting character, but as a whole person. Mom said I was being dramatic. Dad said I was throwing away family over pride. Connor didn't say anything because he'd already hung up. The calls stopped. The texts dried up. Thanksgiving came without an invitation. Christmas, too. At first, the silence felt like punishment. Then it started feeling like permission. I threw myself into the new consulting venture. We landed our first major client in January, a mid-size property management company looking to retrofit their buildings with sustainable HVAC systems. The exact pivot I'd suggested to Dad years ago. My business partner, Keisha, became a real friend, the kind who showed up with wine when I had hard days and sent me clients when she couldn't take them. We built something based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. 6 months after Morton's, I got a text from an unknown number. "Victoria. Connor's struggling with the business. Things are harder than he expected. Would you be willing to help?" Family rates, of course. Family rates, meaning free. I sat with it, feeling for the old guilt, the old obligation. They were there, faint, like old scars that ache when it rains, but they didn't control me anymore. I wrote back, "I'm not available. Best of luck." She tried again. "You'd really let your family's business fail out of spite? It's not my family's business. Connor's running it now. I'm sure he'll figure it out." I blocked the number, not out of anger, out of clarity. 9 months after Morton's, I saw them by accident. Coffee shop, meeting a potential client. Dad walked in with Connor. They didn't see me at first. I watched Dad's hand on Connor's shoulder, that same proud gesture. Connor looked tired, older. They were talking intensely over a laptop. I considered leaving before they noticed me. Then I decided I had as much right to be there as anyone. Dad looked up. Our eyes met. I saw recognition, then something harder to read. He nodded once, formal, like I was a business acquaintance. I nodded back. Connor never looked up. They got their coffee to go and left. The whole interaction took 90 seconds. My client arrived. We talked about thermal efficiency and market opportunities. We shook hands on a deal that would be my biggest contract yet. I drove home feeling accomplished, energized. Not lonely, not sad, just clear. A year after Morton's, Keisha and I were featured in an industry magazine, not for drama, but for our innovative approach to sustainable commercial solutions. I don't know if Dad saw it. We didn't speak. Through Aunt Marie, I learned Connor stepped down from the business after 14 months. He'd run 3 major contracts into the ground, lost 2 key employees, and nearly bankrupted the company. Dad had to come out of retirement to salvage what was left. They ended up selling to a competitor for 30 cents on the dollar. The vintage Rolex, the one I'd loved as a child, got sold too. Liquidating assets to cover debts. Marie told me this over coffee, watching my face carefully. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Mostly, I just felt sad for the waste of it all. "Does Dad ever ask about me?" I asked. Marie stirred her coffee. "He mentions you sometimes. Never directly. He'll see an article about sustainable building and say, 'Elena was always talking about that.' Like you're a ghost, like he didn't choose this. Does he know I'm doing well? I think that's what bothers him most." 2 weeks after that coffee, something unexpected happened. Connor reached out. Not through Victoria. Not through Mom. Directly. "Can we talk?" No agenda. "I just want to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. I could have ignored it. Would have been justified. But I was curious. We met at a neutral coffee shop. He looked different, less polished. The expensive watch was gone. He'd lost weight. He didn't apologize right away. Instead, he said, "I had no idea what I was doing. With the business. I thought it would be like real estate. It wasn't." "I know. You tried to tell them. For years. I looked through the files. All your reports. You had a plan for everything." I sipped my coffee. Waited. "I was jealous of you," he said quietly. "Growing up, you were smarter. You worked harder. You cared about things. I just coasted. And when Dad offered me the business, I took it because I thought maybe I could finally be the son he wanted. Turns out I couldn't fake competence." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," he continued. "I just wanted you to know I see it now. What they did to you. What I let them do." I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. He wasn't the entitled golden child anymore. He was just a guy who'd been handed something he didn't earn and discovered too late that gifts can be curses. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. We talked for another hour. Not about reconciliation or fixing things. Just talking. He told me about therapy, about his marriage struggling, about having to get a regular job for the first time in his life. I told him about my business, about Keisha, about building something from scratch. When we left, he hugged me. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me. It means something. I don't know if we'll be close. Probably not. But it was a start towards something honest. Mom and Dad never reached out. I heard through Marie that Mom tells people I'm going through a phase. That Dad says I'm too sensitive for business. They've rewritten the story to make themselves the victims of my cruelty. I used to think that would destroy me. It doesn't. Here's the thing about setting boundaries. People will tell you you're destroying relationships. They'll weaponize words like family and loyalty and forgiveness. But boundaries don't destroy relationships. They reveal them. The relationships that survive are built on mutual respect. The ones that fall apart were only holding together because someone was doing all the folding, all the bending, all the work. I stopped folding. Some relationships didn't survive. Others, like the one with Aunt Marie and this tentative new thing with Connor, grew into something real. Last month, Keisha and I signed our biggest contract yet. A multi-year retrofit project for a chain of commercial properties. The kind of deal that establishes a company. We celebrated with champagne in the office. She raised her glass. To partners who show up. To showing up, I echoed. That night, I bought myself a watch. Not a Rolex. Something simpler, more my style. The second hand ticked instead of swept. Individual moments instead of continuous motion. I liked it better. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things went down. If I wish I'd handled it differently, kept the peace, maintained the relationship. I tell them I miss who I hoped they'd be. I don't miss who they actually were. That feels true enough. My apartment isn't small anymore. I moved to a 2-bedroom with space for an office and windows that let in morning light. I hung artwork I chose. I painted walls colors I liked. I built a life where my worth isn't up for negotiation. Some mornings I still feel that old reflex, the one that wants to check if everyone else is okay, if I've done enough, if I'm good enough. Then I remember the salmon, cut into smaller and smaller pieces. I remember the watch I'll never inherit and the business I helped build but will never own. And I remember the moment I chose myself. Setting boundaries doesn't end relationships. It edits them down to the honest ones.